You can see these are the various ways of traveling. This chart is from the UK. So the distances are in kilometers and the weights are in grams. And their transportation all around is more efficient than ours. So ours might be a little bit less efficient, but relative to each form of transportation to another, this is similar in the US. The most carbon intensive form of travel is a domestic flight. So that's like going New York to Chicago. The next most carbon intensive is a single person in an automobile. Slightly less is a person with a diesel automobile. And I should say, this is from the UK, where I know that their cars are more fuel efficient than ours. So our carbon footprint of automobile traffic's worse than this. Short haul flight economy, so that would be like Washington to New York or something like that, is less is more efficient. And then believe it or not, long haul flights, so that's like New York to London, are about almost half what a domestic flight is. After that, more efficient becomes a bus, and then a motorcycle. How many of you want to hop on a motorcycle? Petrol car, 2 people in a car. So you can see that's 96 is half of 192. And then, if you're driving diesel, it's even, it would be even half of that. Again, they don't have it on here. Then there's a medium electric vehicle. I actually drive an electric car, so I'm happy to know that when my wife and I drive together, we're using one of the most carbon efficient methods of travel. Then there's national rail. So that's the British equivalent of our train. So you can see it's way down here compared to either a bus or domestic flight. So it's very carbon friendly. Then, hey, ferry, if you get on a boat, say you're going from Dublin to Liverpool, or the Eurostar. That's my favorite. That's my dream, to travel the Eurostar from London to Paris someday anyway. Boy, that's 6 grams, 6 grams of carbon per mile travel for a kilometer traveled. Okay, disadvantage. By the way, any questions about either of these things, the route, the advantages, carbon footprint, before I go any further? Very glad to entertain questions. And if you want to unmute yourself right now and ask a question, go ahead and do that.
I wanted to ask something, Ross. I put it on the chat also. So it looks, according to the map, that Amtrak does not go down to the Rio Grande Valley, like McAllen or Edinburgh, Texas. Right? It's only from San Antonio and it goes up. Dallas, Fort Worth.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. You can go along here. I don't know exactly these towns.
It would be down to the tip.
I've heard of McAllen, Texas. Where is it?
At the tip of Texas.
Like very down.
Right
wait.
there.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't go down there. That's right. That's right.
Just wanted to clarify it. Thank you.
I will. Here's something interesting. Sometimes you can search. Oops, we keep. Sometimes you can search, and Amtrak actually offers buses that connect to train stations. So, for example, I used to live in Boise, Idaho, which is a beautiful town, and they have the most beautiful train station. And unfortunately, you can see the Amtrak no longer goes through there, but you can catch a bus from Salt Lake City to Boise on Amtrak. So you can actually book an Amtrak ticket from like, say, Omaha to Boise, and they'll bus you the last section. Isn't that interesting? So, and they do that also in California, because I don't think the Amtrak doesn't go any longer into San Francisco. Any questions? I'll get to the disadvantages here in a second. Yes, I appreciate those of you that put the questions in the chat. Tamar says she's gone from Dearborn, Michigan to San Francisco via train, and a roommate loved it. Glad. Yay. I love those roomettes. Then I traveled from San Francisco down to LA and back to Dearborn. I like the roomettes. Maybe Tamar, you can tell us later about your roommate experience. Mine was good. And yeah, no Amtrak to McAllen, Texas. Very good. Thank you for putting your questions in the chat. Okay, the disadvantages of traveling by train. It can be more expensive than flying. Right now, when there's really cheap airfare, it can be cheaper. It really depends on what the route is and what you want to do. So if you want to go from Chicago to Seattle, the train might be cheaper, but you're going to be on the train for 3 days and 2 nights. And unless you get a roomette, you're going to be sleeping in a coach car, which is not advisable. And then a roomette would be more expensive. So you really have to weigh it up. On long distances, you have to weigh up what form you're going to take. Are you going to be in a coach? Do you need to be in a roomette because you're going overnight? And to me, a roomette or an Amtrak room are experiences. I mean, that's why I think you book one is for the experience. So anyway, arrivals and departures are not always reliable. I will say Amtrak's gotten a lot better. Years ago, I would take Amtrak, and the Amtrak could be 2 to 3 hours late. Now, it's more minutes. And frankly, my wife takes this regular Amtrak from Charlottesville to New York, and she says it's on time in every place all the time. So the part of the reason that for this is that Amtrak has to rent the use of the track from freight companies. They no longer own their own track. And so they might get stuck behind a train, freight train. So that can be a disadvantage, but I've found them to be more and more reliable in recent years. Amtrak does not connect everywhere. So I pointed out there are big parts of the country that you won't see Amtrak. Travel times and dates are not always convenient. So in some cities, like if you want to travel Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh, it's going to let you off in Pittsburgh in the middle of the night, which is not fun. Same thing if you want to travel Pittsburgh to Washington, you're going to have to pick up the train in the middle of the night going the other way. That's just the fact that there's a single train now. When my dad was a young man, I've got letters of his talking about taking the train here to there, and there were multiple trains a day. Or he'd talk about when he was going to visit, and he said he didn't know which train he'd get on, but there would be multiple trains a day. Back then you could go Pittsburgh to Washington and pick one up in Pittsburgh in the morning and get to Washington in the afternoon. Anyway, current Amtrak times are not always convenient. Just something to point out, you can purchase a 30-day pass. Okay, so you have to use it within 30 days. It allows you to travel 10 segments. A segment is every time you get on or off a train. So if you take the train from Washington to Chicago and you don't get off, if that's just the Capital Limited, that counts for one single segment, because that's a long segment. And again, it's overnight. Roomettes don't count. But if you're going Washington to New York and back, that's 2 segments, one each way. That a cost is $499 for the pass. So that comes out to about $50 a segment. You have to weigh that up. Amtrak's been doing a lot of sales recently, and sometimes they're selling them for less than that per segment. But if it's a reasonable segment where you're going maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 hours and you're not overnight,